G'day Internet, and welcome back to another video. So for the three of you who watched my video on my Retro Mini Flashback Micro Console collection, you may have remember a comment that I made that I really am the world's worst gamer. And there was that and the fact that like the PlayStation Classic had just come out, and if you watch any video on YouTube about the PlayStation Classic or the NES Classic or any of those other mini consoles, the comments are always the same. You can do that on a RetroPie, you can do that in emulation, you can do that on your phone, and they are all completely valid points. However, those kind of comments, and having done that other video, did get me thinking that of all the gaming stuff that I have, be it consoles, computers, whatever, my main item that I use for gaming is this little guy here. This is the original GPD XD that was released some time ago, and there's a new one out now, which we'll touch on. But I thought it might be a great opportunity to have a very quick look at the original GPD XD. So this is the original GPD XD made by Gamepad Digital out of China. I picked mine up locally some time ago. It's probably at least a couple of years ago now. And I don't need to tell you that it's modeled significantly like a Nintendo DS or a 3DS. This is very 3DS-ish. And if we have a look around the back, we've got shoulder buttons, HDMI power, micro SD, and externally, that's pretty much about it. For interest's sake, let's bring in my DSi, and you can see that there's not that, you can see the similarities, you can see where they based it on. Anyway, let's get the Nintendo out of the way. And if we have a look, big empty spot here because it's not like a 3DS, it's only got one, and we've got a 5-inch 720p IPS screen. So let's turn it on, and while it's booting up, let's have a look at what we've actually got. So we've got two analog thumbsticks, we've got D-pad, 4 face buttons here, home and back more for Android-y kind of stuff, select and start, volume control, power, menu button, and a gamepad button, L3 and R3 up on the top, and then L2 and R2 round the back. Now, the biggest criticism I had of this when I very first got it was basically the software. Hardware-wise, I think it's really good. Speaking of hardware, okay, so it runs a Rock chip RK3288, which is an ARM A17 running at 1.4 gigahertz. It's a quad-core processor, and it's got an ARM Mali T764 GPU, 2 gig of RAM, like I said, 5-inch 720p IPS screen, and they came in either 1632 or 64 gig versions, but you've got a micro SD card slot on the back, and it can take up to 128 gig. So that's the hardware. Software wise, the actual underlying operating system, the most you can update this to is Android 4.4.4 KitKat, which isn't too limiting just yet. But already some of the emulators I run on here, I had to actually go and find the APK files and install them manually because the version that's on Google Play won't run on 4.4.4 anymore. So what have I done to this? This is actually still running the stock operating system. It is an updated version from when I first got it. Everyone seems to run Legacy ROM, and I'll put a link down in the description, which has been developed by, give me a second and I will tell you. So Legacy ROM is actually developed by a skeleton, and I'll put a link to his website down below. Now, I have run that, and it does have some significant benefits. You can do some overclocking up to 1.8 gigahertz, and it does take a lot of the bloatware out. However, on the version of the standard operating system that I'm running, I was actually able to uninstall most of the bloatware. And even at the stock 1.4 gigahertz, everything seems to run fine. My other main complaint was the default launcher that came with it. And so one of the first things I did was install another one. The one I'm using is, which is a good question because I can never remember the name of it, called Square Home. And because I actually find that Metroid / Windows 8-ish kind of interfaces work well on these types of game devices. So I got rid of the default launcher and a few of the rubbish apps that came with it, including one called Happy Chick, which supposedly allows you to just download ROMs. I don't know what the quality of the ROMs are, and so I got rid of it anyway. And then when I first got it, I spent a lot of time kind of finding the best emulators I could bang for bucks. So there's a few free versions, there's a few paid versions. So let's take a quick look at the emulators I'm running here. So we've got SNES 9X, EPSXE, which is a paid one, MD-EMU for Mega Drive, PPS-SPP for PSP, MAME for Droid, obviously for MAME, Master EMU for Master System, Mugen 64 for N64, My Old Boy for Game Boy, and My Boy for GBA, and Nostalgia NES for NES stuff. So this is the device, and it works really well, to be honest. It does take a lot of fiddle fighting around to get the emulator set up and to get the physical controls to talk to the emulators. I've actually found EPSXE to be the most painful. Most of the others detected it automatically, but for the PlayStation stuff, it took a bit of fiddling around. But it runs everything kind of up to the PlayStation-y level pretty well. PlayStation stuff seems to run fine. Dreamcast can be a little hit and miss, and so can the N64 stuff, primarily because, look, N64 emulation isn't exactly that easy, but it will do it. But let's start from the beginning. We'll just load up some Super Nintendo. So we go load game. It's already gone to the last directory I used where all my ROMs are. Scroll down, and we all know what game I'm going to play is... Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Whoop, past it. Of course, is Super Mario Kart, which I was playing before. This isn't easy to play through a camera, but it works fine. I think the 720p screen works really well. I think it's a little bit more forgiving than a really high-res 180p screen. And look, none of these consoles ran anywhere near 720p to begin with. So in that regard, it works fantastically. But everything can emulate a Super Nintendo or a Nintendo these days. If we go to, say, let's try the N64 stuff. Oh, Mario Kart's already there. Come on, we can't just play Mario Kart, can we? Where are we? Mario Party, Mario Golf. Let's just go straight with... And a lot of the kind of, I guess, the original games work really well under N64, because obviously they've been around the longest. I'm assuming they're the simplest, and thus kind of, the easiest to get your emulator running on. But as you can see, it's running nice and smooth. Sound is going okay. This game really does take a while to kind of, you know, get going. But yeah, I mean, it works. It's smooth as silk, it's nice, crisp and clean. There doesn't seem to be any weird artifacting or hesitation. And so that's the N64 running on what is now a 3-year-old Android console. I think that's pretty good. So if we go back here, there isn't really that much more to say. The Play Store works fine. You can hide away all your other applications like you can on any other Android device. But the only thing it really lacks, I think, is Bluetooth. So you can't use like Bluetooth headphones or anything like that, which is a little frustrating. But it's got a headphone port around the back, so it's not the end of the world. So that's a very quick look at the original GPD XD, which I actually think it holds its own pretty well for a 3-year-old console. Now, the new version has just come out. Well, earlier this year it came out, which is the GPD XD Plus. There are some upgrades. It runs 4 gig of RAM. It's got a slightly better processor in it. Screen's the same and the controls are all the same. So it's really much the muchness. In saying that though, purely for the hell of it, I jumped on eBay just to see what the prices were for these second hand. And for starters, there was very few of them on eBay at the moment, second hand. And the other thing is they were all asking pretty much like $20 less than a brand new one. So look, if I was to buy one now, obviously I wouldn't even bother looking secondhand. I'd just buy a new one. But I actually think for emulation, especially portable emulation, now I know we can do it on most phones. And I know the PSP is very popular for modifying and running emulators on. My only concern about the PSP is that all the original batteries are now long gone, and my experience with the replacement ones off eBay or Amazon or whatever have been pretty average. So, but my only real concern about the PSP is batteries. While the batteries in this seem to be still lasting fine, you get a good several hours out of it, and I actually think in this form factor, this is my preferred form factor for any kind of handheld. So like an upright style one, like an original Game Boy, it works, but I've got big hands and I find it a bit cramped. So being able to have my hands slightly wider apart and I can get round to the buttons a bit easier, this is the way I prefer it, or something kind of Game Gear or Atari Lynx-ish. And so this is I guess this is kind of somewhere between the two of them. But it's got more than enough grunt to run pretty much anything, like I said, up to about the PlayStation-ish era, and all the 16-bit and 8-bit stuff can do it in its sleep. It's got a really nice screen on it. The controls, I think, are fine. Few people complained that they didn't like some of the buttons or the analog sticks, and I've never really had a problem, to be honest. And so when it comes to emulating consoles, this is what I use, and I think it's a really good device to do it on. So thanks for watching my quick look, and I'll see you in the next video.